Hello, my name is Jonathan Rivera. This is my Week 5 Intelligence Cycle video. The case that I chose for the video was determining the probability of another attack in the next 3 to 6 months, similar to the mass shooting that occurred at the Orlando Nighclub in Orlando, Florida on June 12, 2016. So for the first portion of the intelligence cycle, planning and direction, I would expect the FBI to be involved, state law enforcement such as the FDLE, which was involved in the Florida incident, ATF due to the involvement of firearms in these incidents, the Department of Homeland Security potentially, as well as the CIA, depending on whether or not the perpetrators or the actual threats were foreigners with international terrorist involvement that would pique the interest of Department of Homeland Security or CIA. Some initial security considerations would be individual threat assessment levels. So if the FBI had a list of 100 individuals who were potential threats, ranking those individuals by the probability and the prominence of the threat, as well as determining some potential targets and locations in states, venues, or population centers at risk for the threat, depending on where the individual threats were located, in which cities and which states, and what the evidence at hand suggested as far as intentions. I would expect some interagency cooperation, cross-agency cooperation to have some impact on the intelligence process, but not be a detriment. International cooperation would be necessary if it involves some foreigners or foreign agents of some sort that had links or connections to foreign terrorist organizations, international terrorist organizations, or international organizations known for violence or carrying out violent activities. For the collection portion, some key types of information that would be sought after would be violent histories of individuals, desire to do harm, efforts to attain weapons, efforts to reach out to other radicals or to radical organizations, terrorist organizations, whether they be domestic or international, making overt threats to other individuals, whether it be on social media or other platforms or medias, and patterns of mental instability. I believe open source intelligence would be extremely useful in this particular case due to the prevalence and prominence of social media. A lot of the past mass shooting incidents have had a lot of open source social media related evidence, such as pictures and posts, disturbing posts, angry posts, pictures depicting weapons or connections to ideologies of violence or organizations that stand for violence or have histories of violence, whether they be terrorist organizations internationally or domestic violent organizations, as well as emails, blogs, or any other kind of communications that express violent ideologies or threats of violence against others. For the processing portion, I would expect human to be largely important, open source intelligence, all source intelligence, maybe some technical intelligence as well. Definitely human as far as interviewing individuals connected to the threat, so family members, friends, colleagues, former employers. Open source intelligence could be their social media activity, any kind of digital footprint they may leave behind. Biases that could affect objective analysis include similar biases that were found in the Omar Mateen the Pulse nightclub case, where authorities were essentially looking for him to be connected to international terrorist organizations, and when they found no evidence of such connection, they largely moved on, released him from their questioning, and moved on to the next threat. So that would be something to avoid, not anticipate or assume connections to a larger, broader ideology or larger, broader organization, but objectively and independently look at the evidence on an individual basis. So the 3 to 6 month time constraint would be a factor in the intelligence analysis. I don't expect it to be a limiting or detrimental factor, but it would definitely lend a sense of urgency for the intelligence cycle to be executed and products to be given to consumers within the 3 to 6 month time frame. The analysis and production portion of the intelligence cycle. So the sorts of intel products would be warnings, maybe tip-offs to law enforcement agencies located in the states or cities where the actual threats exist. So I could see a lot of tips or warnings from federal agencies to local and state agencies about said individuals in their jurisdictions. Overlapping intel that could be produced could come from both human and open source intelligence producing similar products, similar findings, therefore corroborating evidence from both sources, but there could also be some contradictory evidence found based on the validity and the integrity of the human sources. For dissemination and integration, primary consumers would be law enforcement, whether that be federal, state, or local. So FBI, FDLE as an example, and some county law enforcement to go all the way down the levels. Issues that may impact quick dissemination could be problems obtaining warrants, whether they be FISA warrants for foreign individuals or agents of foreign governments, or just criminal warrants, providing probable cause to get those criminal warrants for domestic cases, as well as the sophistication of the threat. If the threat is actively deceiving authorities, it could be an obstacle for the dissemination of the intel products and the overall intelligence process. Decisions that I think could be considered relative to this case could be legislation, perhaps some new laws, such as stricter gun control for individuals that have histories of mental health or are part of FBI watch lists, local authority watch lists, that could be bars from obtaining weapons due to their presence on the watch list. Some new strategies that could come from intelligence agencies. Referring to this case, it could be a new strategy as far as not looking at it from the sense of, is this individual connected to an international terrorist organization, and if he is, let's do further investigation, but to objectively and independently look at an individual by individual basis of each case and look at a pattern of life and look at an overall picture, broad picture of the evidence to drive the intelligence analysis and the investigation, as opposed to the amount of links or connections they have with known terrorist organizations. That being said, I would say that the intelligence cycle is extremely important in what I would consider the long-term goal of the case, which is establishing a method or a precedent for how to accurately identify domestic terror threats that aren't necessarily connected to international or known terrorist organizations, and how to get the information about those threats and disseminate it down to local and state law enforcement who can intervene before attacks occur, and not have any more missed opportunities where intelligence does exist, but it was not pieced together quick enough to effectively intervene before an attack occurred in the case, like it did in the case of the Orlando Nighclub shooting in 2016.